Hello, I am going to go over the basics of Unreal today. I'm going to try and keep it super basic and just give a quick overview of viewport, how to create a new project, real simple stuff. We'll go over more specific building and level design issues in other videos. So to start, we launch our Unreal, which is here. And you can choose what engine you want to launch. Getting the latest is good. Right now it's 10.1, so I'm going to launch 10.1, which I hit this button and this window pops up. So these are my old projects, which are scattered all about, and I don't want to open one of those. I want to open a new one. Click on the New Project tab, and for most of my classes I am sticking with first person or third person. This is classic action adventure first person level design. It's what my levels and tutorials have been based on. For other classes I have taught the top down using Diablo type RPG, role-playing game, action RPG setup. But I haven't really messed around with any of these others like flying or twin stick shooter or 2D side scroller. I haven't messed around with any of that stuff. So stick with one of these, first person or third person. I'm going to go with third person. I'm going to keep my path the same here, and I'm going to change it to Unreal Tutorial. So make sure you change your project name. Calling everything my project is not good, not very efficient. Hit create project. When the magic begins, and voila, this is what we get. So by default, it is automatically going to open the third person example map, and that example map lives in, and it seems like recently they started hiding your content going specifically to here, which if you haven't been using Unreal for a while can be confusing. So what I want to do is go to the very top of the content folder here. If I click on content, and actually if I click on this, I want to show this panel. This is the part that's deceptive. We want to make sure we see this panel. So make sure you click on this button here. So this is our entire content folder, and this is where if you're going to bring in static meshes, import a static mesh, import a material, a texture, that type of thing, you'll put it in your content folder. So by default, when I created this project, I included starter content, which there is a button there that you can include starter content or not. It's good to use if you're not used to Unreal. It gives you materials to play with. These three materials are good for building levels. I don't recommend using any or anything that requires UV mapping. For level design, I don't want to get into UV mapping. It distracts people. It takes artistic talent to make it look good. People start mixing and matching green with purple, with glow in the dark, with cool copper. It turns into a mess. So I would stick with these: basic wall, basic floor, and platform. And just keep everything kind of in a gray color and use your lighting. So as we navigate about here, we have architecture, which is basically static meshes you could create a building with. Blueprints. Blueprints is the way you script in Unreal, or how we'll be scripting. It's a visual language for scripting. You see everything visual with nodes. So when people say blueprints, don't get confused. It's basically a script. You can also use it to create objects, so you can have everything centralized, kind of like a prefab in Unity. Our mannequin is obviously our character here. So I tried to click on, there he is. Third person folder has meshes, and if you're going to create the first person project, you're going to have other folders that say first person instead of third person. And our default map lives in here, third person example map. So it's good to go in the content folder, create a new folder, and create something like my maps or my levels, whichever you prefer. so you can keep your map in here. If you have it floating around in all these different folders, it can get lost, it can get annoying. And one thing we'll show you how to do is have the default map start on your map instead of another default map, so you don't have to constantly click on it. So those are the basics of your content folder, what everything contains in there. If we go up here to our level, right now I'm clicked on my third-person character, and it shows a nice picture-in-picture camera view here, which is great. If there's any camera in your level and you click on it, it'll show that, which is excellent to position your camera and what you see. As we navigate around, we use the WASD to navigate like a first-person shooter type setup, which is great. As you can see, I can fly really smoothly. F zooms in on an object in case you do something like this, fly off to the clouds, and you're like, where is my level? Hit F, it'll zoom back. And all these objects in your level live in the world outliner. So if you come up here, you can see, and they tell you what they are. We have a static mesh actor, we have a skylight, fog, etc., etc. So here I'm in my level, navigating about, and I know how to find objects. Let's move an object. So just like Maya, 3D Max, most 3D software packages, hitting W will bring up your move tool, E brings up the rotate tool, R brings up the scale tool, and you can scale on a particular axis, or if you scale in the middle, do it uniformly. The icons are up here to switch manually if you want. Move tool, rotate, scale. If you don't want your object to snap to the grid or change the way it snaps, you can go up here, click off the snap, or you can change how it rotates. So now it snaps every 45 degrees. If you want to change the view, you go up here to the far left, click on this, and we have all the classics. We have the right, which it now by default looks like is in wireframe mode. If I want to switch that, I go up to this tab, I can switch between lit, unlit, wireframe. That's basically the three we're going to use the most. There's a whole lot of other options in here, but those are the three we're going to use the most. Lit, unlit, wireframe. This tab you can hide things, objects in your world, and for smaller levels like us, not so critical. I'm going to go back to perspective view, hit F. Right now this whole world is made of static meshes for the most part and some lights. So if I was looking for a particular light or audio source and I could not find it in here and I was completely confused, I was like, what did I name it? And because this level is pretty small, it seems ridiculous to need to do this, but if you start building larger levels, professional levels, there could be hundreds of objects in here, and it gets really messy as everything overlaps. So doing something like this, I'm going to hide my static meshes, and aha! There's my light. But it also can be dangerous because if you accidentally check this, or uncheck it, you're going to think everything disappeared in your world. So remember this tab up here. Here's a few other little things we can toggle between, which I'm not going to show right now. So let's run around in our world. Let's hit play. So by default it plays in the viewport. Run around, and you can see my scaled object here, which I can get up on top. Jump around. If I don't want to play in the viewport, I can also, a couple more options. I could do a mobile preview, or I could do a new editor window. So it gives me the nicely set up editor window. It's a little more professional and not strange, set up into a strange shape. There are dimensions. Hit escape to get out of that. This is basically our building menu over here. These are where you can, this search can search out anything you're looking for. I need a light. You can show anything with light in the title. I need particles. No particles. Paper character. Empty pawn. Default pawn. I need fog. 2 fogs. I can't say that. Exponential height fog and atmospheric fog. I need a cube. There's a default cube. So the search works really well. So the tabs are basic, which, as you can see, this is basic static mesh we can throw in the world. And BSP stands for your brushes. And I'm going to go over in the next tutorial how to use brushes. Brushes and static mesh are completely different objects. I will go over that later. Visual effects, decals, reflection maps, atmospheric fog, we have lights, we have a variety of light types, volumes, triggers, etc. So that's where you navigate your building. Up here we have the ability to paint different colors. I believe you can do vertex coloring as well. This is your landscape tool, which is a lot like the terrain tool in Unity, which many people use and make hideous looking terrains, otherwise known as landscapes in here. So very powerful tool. Make sure you use it wisely. This is how you paint foliage and such, trees, grass. And this is geometry editing. So with your BSP brushes, go to BSP here, and I just lost my entire world. Go to wall, hit F, ta-da, back. I'm going to put a brush in here. And with this brush, I'm going to go to geometry editing, and now it lets me edit the brush a little bit like something you can do in Maya. So I can click on the points and manipulate the points. So that's what geometry editing does. It allows you to edit the brushes, do a little more complex, and I would highly recommend you don't do any complex shapes with the brushes. Keep it super simple. And in later tutorials I will go over how to use brushes mixed with static mesh, how to turn brushes into static mesh, how to make the use of brushes very efficient. They can really suck up your resources in your computer. It'll start really messing with your frame rate and your memory and stuff by using too many brushes. So what you want to do is use the simplicity and the power of the brushes to build things quickly, and then turn them into static meshes if you have, or go into Maya and create static meshes based on those brushes, and have static mesh make up most of your level, because it's much cheaper and cleaner in the long run. So that's the basic building window over here. As you select each object, we'll select this cube mesh. Go over here, we're going to see a details tab. Now the details tab gives details on a particular object. So if you're like, want to change the material, you can change it here. You can see the material tab here. If you're looking for that material, let's say it had a brick material on it, you're like, where is it, where is it, where is it? You're looking through all these different folders, can't find it. Easiest way is to click on the object, go to the material and the details, click on the magnifying glass, and bam, it'll find it for you here in the content folder. So then you can apply it to other objects if you want to. Same with the static mesh. So the base static mesh lives in the content folder. Brushes don't live in the content folder. You create them on the fly as you build your level, whereas a static mesh lives here in the content folder. So if I click on that, it'll go find it. There it is in my content folder. If I double click on this, I can edit the collision, I can do things like that, which I will not do now. We'll go over static meshes later. There's other things in here where it talks about specific collision presets, what it interacts with. This does not actually set the collision to be a box or more complex collision. You actually have to double click on the object and set the collision in here, which I won't go over now. I'll go over later, just so you know. This actually kind of sets up the presets. What do you want it to interact with? Do you want it to interact with other static objects? Do you want it to interact with a pawn, which is basically your character? If you don't want to interact with the pawn, you could actually turn off this block all and go to custom and say don't interact with the pawn and turn that off. It'll ignore it. And there's a whole bunch of other things in here. Rendering is important. Is it visible in the world? Is the actor hidden in the world? So there's different ways to use. You can toggle visible and you can set hidden using blueprints and scripts. Remember, blueprints are just really scripts, and you can also use them to create objects or prefabs, a common term used in Unity. You can set up, you know, an object with a script connected to it, all within a blueprint. So it's kind of a more powerful version of, it's kind of like a combination of a script and a prefab in Unity is the easiest way for me to describe it. If you've never used it in Unity, a prefab in Unity, we'll go over how to create specific objects in Unreal in another tutorial. So don't worry, this is just the basics. A couple other things to go over are we did the play, looked at all the building modes, we saw the content, how to navigate about. I think that's it for right now. I think everything else is going to get way more specific when it comes to level design. How to construct a level from scratch, how to set the default map, how to start setting up settings to make your level run a little bit smoother. We're going to do that all in the next tutorial. Alright, so this is it for this tutorial, Basics of Unreal. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.